So Cloudingo Intelligence, it's the newest feature for Cloudingo, and it actually is a little bit of a departure for us. So if you've been working with Cloudingo and you're well familiar with what Cloudingo does, Cloudingo focuses on the data that's held in Salesforce. So it allows you to do things like dedupe and merge and convert and mass updates and deletes. You can import data. You can use integrations for the data that's flowing into Salesforce and do some data management that way. So again, Cloudingo typically has focused on the data itself, but with Cloudingo Intelligence, we have started thinking a little bit more directly about the Salesforce instance itself. And Cloudingo Intelligence was designed to provide you with a quick and easy dashboard way of monitoring the health and the status and the security of your Salesforce instance itself. So not so much about the data, but more about Salesforce itself. And I'm going to show you the Cloudingo Intelligence dashboard. You can see it over here. You just click on the intelligence link in the left navigational menu, and it just loads that dashboard right up for you. Now, there are sort of three main components for the elements that you can monitor with Cloudingo Intelligence. And those sort of categories are security and monitoring, performance and reliability, and application code and governance. So I'm going to go through the different tiles that you see on the Cloudingo Intelligence dashboard and just sort of explain them to you. And then I'll also show you the Smart Alerts dashboard that is tied to Cloudingo Intelligence. So let's start with just security and monitoring. Okay, so security and monitoring, thinking about health, status, security of your Salesforce instance. The first thing you're going to see right here when you log in is this map view, and that provides you with a way to track your global logins. So who is logging into your Salesforce instance and from where? And it's a way for you to monitor that access and to be aware of potential threats from security breaches. So you've got a map view. This can be zoomed in. You can move it around. And you can even drill into it and get a little bit more detail. So this is an internal instance of Salesforce here on our side, but it is all live data. Again, global login tracking, see who's logging into your Salesforce instance and from where to sort of track any potential security threats or breaches. All right, I'm going to scroll down just a little bit to another tile. We're going to pass over some of these because I've categorized them in a way that makes better sense, but isn't exactly how they're presented in the dashboard. We're going to talk about your network access management. So your network access management monitor allows you to track your whitelisted IPs and track those against incoming connections. So it's important to see what's been designated as trusted and to restrict access and require verification when needed. And you can see here that this is pretty blank. It also gives you an idea if your whitelisted IPs haven't been correctly labeled in your Salesforce instance. So if you scroll through here, I think we've got one here that's labeled. So it's a nice way to kind of clean that up, make it a little bit more accessible to you, a little bit more meaningful, and it's a way for you to track who you've allowed access to and whether or not you need to rescind that access. Okay, all about your security and monitoring that security. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down here to the bottom. And we've got two reports here, two report tiles, the admin user ratio, idle users report. And these things are important because you want to be aware of the level of access that you've actually given to your users in your Salesforce instance. So for example, if everybody's been designated a systems administrator, and this happens a lot, we see this a lot, particularly in smaller organizations, those systems administrator users have full access to control, manage, change, edit your entire Salesforce configuration. Not always a good idea from a security standpoint. Right? So we've given you this ratio. We've also designated whether or not that's a risk factor in your instance. But it's, again, designed to give you a sense and an oversight into your data and your data management. The idle users report also gives you an opportunity to think about, all right, we've assigned these user licenses that we are paying for. So you pay Salesforce for licenses. Are they actually being used? Have you just sort of given people some licenses because they felt, I don't know, maybe left out of Salesforce, but they don't actually need it and you're spending money on those licenses? Or have people left your organization and you're still continuing to pay for those licenses? So again, this is a way for you to track who actually has a license and whether or not those licenses are being used, whether they're logging in and actively working in Salesforce. And again, this is another report that you can sort of drill into and get some insights, more detailed insight, all right, off the dashboard. Okay, so that's our security and monitoring component. We're going to move on to performance and reliability. I'm going to scroll right down here to the trust tile. So if you're not familiar, you should become familiar with Salesforce Trust. Salesforce Trust is a Salesforce-sponsored website where you can go to track performance and maintenance that's happening in your Salesforce instance. There's a couple of challenges with that. One, it's a place that you have to remember to go to. And they don't, the Salesforce does typically send out some push notifications, but I have noticed that those push notifications about problems that they're seeing across the Salesforce ecosystem are often quite delayed. The problems have started and they've been aware of them for a considerable amount of time before they actually send that push notification out. But we've provided that status for your instances right here in your Cloudingo Intelligence dashboard. You can scroll through here. You can see there's no incidents happening on our instance right now, but you can also see when scheduled maintenance is coming up. So we've already got the dates for the spring and the summer 26 releases. So again, just things to be aware of about how Salesforce is functioning and whether or not Salesforce is aware of any problems that they're experiencing and whether or not they're working on them. Right to the right of that is a tile that shows your API usage within your individual Salesforce instance. So most of you should know that Salesforce provides API resources, and those resources are used for various functions, particularly with integrations, but not exclusively with integrations. And there is a finite number of API resources that are available to you in any given day, any 24-hour period of time. They do refresh every 24 hours. But within that 24-hour period, you have a finite number. And depending on what's happening in your Salesforce instance, you run there is always the potential that you could hit that limit. And honestly, we see this often with first-time users of Cloudingo. They're trying to do a massive cleanup that they've never cleaned up their data. They have millions of records that need to be merged. They're running that job. They have a low number of daily API resources available to them, and they hit the limit. So why is that a problem? Well, if you hit the limit, Salesforce locks out access to those resources for a full 24 hours until they fully refresh again. And that can be a problem for you operationally, depending upon what those resources are tied to and how they're being used operationally in your companies, in your organization. Right? So something to be aware of. So again, we've provided this tile for you right here in the middle of this dashboard. And one of the side things I'll say about all of these various tiles and these reports is that there are ways to access this information within Salesforce, but it's very disparate. Oftentimes you have to build custom reports. Oftentimes you have to dig in hidden places and you have to have permissions to those sorts of things. So part of the goal in providing this for you within Cloudingo was to give you this dashboard view where you can quickly scroll to the reports that you need to see. You can do this on a daily, weekly basis, whatever meaningful interval is for you. And you see it all right here. And you don't have to dig through it and remember to touch on all the different pieces that are relevant to your operations. Okay, the next thing I'll talk about is application and code governance. I'm going to scroll down just a little bit further and show you this report. This tile on the Cloudingo Intelligence dashboard is showing you the installed applications and integrations that are running within your Salesforce instance. Right? And why is that important? Well, when you download and install an app or something in Salesforce, it's oftentimes important to pay attention to how it's working in your Salesforce instance. There can be some conflicts of resources. So you want to know a little bit about that. Has it passed its security review in Salesforce? That's an important consideration, I think. And to that end, all of the Cloudingo apps are fully reviewed by Salesforce on a regular basis. But also some other information about the versions and what that app is. And probably the most important thing is whether or not that those apps are using retired versions of the Salesforce APIs. That can be a problem because those apps, if they are in fact using those retired versions, can at some point begin to fail or function in ways that they're not supposed to function. And I'll just point this interesting one out. This is actually a Salesforce product. It's the Salesforce License Management app. We have that installed in our Salesforce instance. Salesforce created it. You can see it's actually using a retired version of the API. And when I reached out after we deployed Cloudingo Intelligence into our own Salesforce instance, into our own Cloudingo instance, I reached out to Salesforce and asked them about it. And they said, oh, yeah, well, I guess we need to work on that and update the LMA. They haven't done it yet, but they have told me that they will. So I just thought that was sort of interesting and curious that we pointed out to Salesforce that their own apps are sometimes using retired versions of the APIs. All right. The last thing I'm going to show you is the custom code intelligence right down here. All right. So with this report, we're providing you with information on your custom classes and triggers and how changes and updates may impact your system. Of all of the reports, this one actually focuses most on the kinds of things that you might be building out in your Salesforce instance and all of those different admins that you have working in your Salesforce instance. You know, they can build triggers, they can build flows, all these different things. And there could be some potential challenges and problems with that. Again, retired APIs, it's just important to be aware of what is running. So we've given you this inventory of those items. Okay, so that is Cloudingo Intelligence in a nutshell. I'm going to show you the alerting component because that, in many ways, may be the most powerful aspect of this. So again, Cloudingo Intelligence is about providing information on the health, status, and security of your Salesforce implementation. And up here, under the Alerts tab, we have a Smart Alerts dashboard. And the Smart Alerts are designed to provide meaningful signals on security policy changes, app installations, idle users, all of those things that you see on the dashboard. But you can actually set an alert to be sent out to you as a push notification. So if you don't always log into Cloudingo, you can have those reports delivered to you. And it's very easy. You just open the segment that you want here. And let's say we want to get a notification when API usage reaches 80% or higher. All I've got to do is click on the little gear button, and I can have that report sent to me, delivered to my inbox on either an instant basis, on a daily basis, a weekly basis. You can set that interval. So all of these smart alerts can be set on all of those various components that Cloudingo Intelligence is monitoring for you. It's very easy, very quick and easy to do. All right. Now, that is Cloudingo Intelligence. I told you this was going to be a quick session, that it wasn't going to take us very long to cover this, but I wanted to get you oriented to Cloudingo Intelligence because it is the newest feature of Cloudingo. And I'd be interested to hear not only your questions, but any suggestions, ideas, input you have, whether or not you think this is going to be useful to you as Salesforce users, as Cloudingo users, if as Salesforce admins, this is something that's valuable to you, if there are other people in your organization who are more concerned about your tech stack and your data infrastructure versus the data itself, those kinds of things. Because again, this is a little bit of a departure for Cloudingo. We're focused on the Salesforce instance itself, as opposed to the data that Cloudingo typically manages. All right. Well, listen, everybody. We will continue doing these sessions in the new year. So just be aware, watch out for those messages from Olivia. She schedules them. We do alternate between the open office hours, which will be next, probably sometime in January. And then we'll have another users group where we try to focus on a topic or a feature or something like that. If you have suggestions for what you'd like to see as part of our users group, do feel free, feel comfortable to send those our way, either through email or through there's a chat window on our website. You can also send those directly to support through the file a support case in the Cloudingo UI in the upper right corner. Any way that you want to communicate with us is fine. So if you do have suggestions, things you want to see in a users group, we would be happy to entertain those. And otherwise, we will look forward to talking with you in 2020.